I started watching wrestling at a very young age, probably around 7 or 8. No idea how or why. It was just something I kind of always enjoyed and always tried to consume as much of as I possibly could. Um, Growing up in the late 90s, my go-to was always WCW. Not entirely the best era for that company, but as a kid, I just fell in love with it. And I loved everybody there. I mean, obviously, the usual guys like Sting, Goldberg, DDP, Booker T, Billy Kidman, the Steiner brothers, you name it. I especially liked the NWO and the Wolfpack. And Scott Hall wasn't really the first wrestler that I gravitated towards, but he was definitely the first one that I kind of wanted to be like. I can't really describe it. He just always seemed like he was the coolest person in the room. And after he died, reading all those stories and tributes from fans, I can see that the feeling was quite mutual. He was the first person that I know of anyway who made it cool to be the bad guy. I wanted to be just like him. I tried to be. I I tried to make my hair look like his. That little strand of hair that went like halfway down his face with the rest of it slicked back. I'd never seen anything like it, and I wanted to do it. I kind of tried, but unfortunately, my mom didn't think it was so cool, and my dreams of having long hair died pretty fast. But still, I could do the strut. I could say "Hey yo," and I could walk around with a toothpick in my mouth. I mean, who else could make them look like way cooler just by sticking a toothpick in their mouth? Who else could do literally anything he did and still look cool? He was pretty much the only person on earth who could pull off literally anything that he did. This reminds me of a memory that I thought I'd buried long ago, but this reminds me of the time I got in trouble at school once for throwing a toothpick at a kid, just like Scott Hall did. There were a lot of bullies at my schools, and I was picked on quite a lot for any number of reasons, really. And one day, I just got fed up, and I just took the thing out of my mouth, and I just flicked it at the guy. um, Unfortunately, a teacher saw me do it, and he called me into his classroom and gave me a lecture on how inappropriate it was, and we don't conduct ourselves like that in this school. I said, well, he shouldn't have been picking on me. He started it, right? He said, well, that's when you got to report it to us and let us handle it. You don't do it yourself. I said, I did say something several times, and nothing happened. So, long story short, he said I wouldn't get any punishment for it, but if he saw me walking down the halls with that toothpick again, he will confiscate it. Yeah, a little piece of wood that you can buy like infinity of at Walmart for like $1.50 that was really threatening to him. But nevertheless, for just a moment, I was the bad guy, and it felt pretty damn good. Later on, you can imagine how much I popped when I saw him alongside Nash and Hogan when the NWO came back to the WWE. And later on in Impact Wrestling as well, back when it was TNA. And just him taking a Stone Cold Stunner like absolutely nobody else I've ever seen do. He'd very obviously slowed down by then, especially during his Impact days, but it was still so cool to see a man that I've admired from almost literally day one as a wrestling fan. As I got older and, thanks to the internet, I could watch more classic wrestling footage without having to rent it from Blockbuster every week. I learned more about, who he used to be before the WCW days. I mean, I always knew that he was Razor Ramon, and he had some really great matches in WWE. That ladder match with Shawn Michaels, obviously. But I didn't get to see a whole lot of it until then, and I didn't realize just how damn influential he was in the wrestling business. I mean, he made the Intercontinental Championship what it was. Some wrestlers just make championships mean something rather than have the title, make the wrestlers themselves mean something. That was Hall with the Intercontinental title. The title didn't make him, he made it. So few wrestlers can say they did that with a title. The most recent example I can think of is Jay Lethal with the Ring of Honor TV title. I didn't realize until much later on just how impactful he was to the Monday Night Wars. I mean, Lex Luger was the first, big, huge appearance, but Scott Hall pretty much changed the entire trajectory of wrestling history with his sudden appearance and the "You Want a War" speech. And on the night of his passing, I learned that in like 2000 or something, he put over Hiroshi Tanahashi in Japan when he was still a young lion and put in a good word for him, while Antonio Inoki didn't really care that much for him. He didn't really see anything in him. And I'm not saying that he was directly responsible for Tanahashi's rise and being the ace of New Japan right now and kind of bringing New Japan back into prominence, but you can't deny he played a really big part in that. He specifically asked to put over Sean Waltman. He specifically asked to put over Chris Jericho early in their careers, and look what it did for both guys, especially Jericho. I mean, if Hall doesn't do any of those things, the wrestling world would look drastically different than it does today. Being a member of the Clique, of course, he did some things he shouldn't have. I mean, he always had his demons. His issues with Shane Douglas come to mind at first, among other more well-documented things that we all know only too well. But then I look at all these tributes and these stories from fans, and I read these, and I just get the sense that he just kind of tried to make up for it, you know, try to be a better person, you know. I read a really heartwarming story from Luke Hawks on Twitter that I'll put a link in the description to it. A fan who gave money to Hall for one of his rehab stints and got sent an autograph for it in return. Just stories like these, just countless stories of him just being such a good person to so many fans, trying to get, you know, some kind of redemption, I guess. And it's not hard to think that he did, at least not for me anyway. I especially appreciate how much he just loves all the parodies and offshoots and, you know, the things that were influenced by the NWO. Things like the BWO in ECW, the JWO, the Bullet Club nowadays. Like, he loves all that. He loved it. He sees it more as a tribute or an homage rather than somebody, you know, like completely ripping it off, you know. Scott Hall was quite a character. He was one of my first favorites. The first one that I really tried to be like, and he was definitely a childhood hero to me. The first bad guy that I ever liked. The first guy to make it cool to be the bad guy. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do. And he has, and he always will. His influence is still being felt today, and it probably always will. Thank you, Scott Hall, for everything.